Assalamu alaikum. This is lecture 6 of data security and encryption, and in this lecture we are going to discuss about the classical techniques of encryption. The first part of classical encryption techniques deals with the symmetric cipher model. We will start with the discussion of cryptography and cryptanalysis and brute-force attack, and in the end we will discuss two substitution techniques known as Caesar cipher and monoalphabetic cipher. At the end of this lecture you should be able to present an overview of main concepts of symmetric cryptography. You should also be able to explain difference between cryptanalysis and brute force attack, and you should understand the fundamental operations such as substitution techniques known as Caesar cipher and monoalphabetic cipher. Before moving forward, let's understand what a symmetric encryption is. Symmetric encryption, also referred as conventional encryption or single key encryption. This encryption method was the only type of encryption in use prior to the development of public key encryption, and it was quite widely used since the 1970s. It remains the most widely used method of two types of encryption. However, currently we will look at a general model for symmetric encryption process. This will help us to or enable us to understand the context within which the algorithms are used. Additionally, we will also examine a variety of algorithms in the use before the advent of computer technology. Before beginning of the lecture, we will discuss few definitions to understand the fundamental concepts used in symmetric encryption. We will define some terms. For example, the first term we have here is a plain text. Plain text is referred or known as the original message. The next term is ciphertext, which is referred as the coded message, which is actually a converted form of plain text. The process used to convert a plain text into a ciphertext is known as enciphering or encryption. The process converts the plain text into a ciphertext using an encryption algorithm. Similarly, the process to decode the information back to plain text from the ciphertext is known as deciphering or decryption. It restores the plain text from the ciphertext using the same algorithm used to convert the plain text to the ciphertext, but in the reverse order. There are many schemes used for encryption constitutes the area of study known as cryptography. This deals with the algorithms, the plain and ciphertext, and the encryption keys. Such a scheme is also known as a cryptographic system or a cipher used to translate the plain text to a ciphertext. One of the important term here is the cryptanalysis. Cryptanalysis refers to the techniques used for deciphering a message without any knowledge of the enciphering details. Cryptanalysis is done by usually an attacker, and it wants to exploit the vulnerabilities to actually extract the information from the ciphertext. It means, in general terms, it means the breaking of the code. And finally, the areas of cryptography and cryptanalysis together are called cryptology. This image presents a simplified symmetric encryption model. A symmetric encryption scheme or model has five different subcategories. The number one is the plain text. Plain text refers to the original input message or the data that is fed to the algorithm. So it can contain any message, any file, or any image, or any other kind of related data. The second ingredient is known as encryption algorithm. There can be certain algorithms such as advanced encryption standard or some data encryption standard. Encryption algorithms refers to the performance of various substitution techniques and transformation of plain text. That means a message X is transferred to a message Y using encryption algorithm. In combination with the encryption algorithm, there must be a secret key shared by sender and the receiver. This is actually the third ingredient of our symmetric encryption model. The secret key is also an input to the encryption algorithm. The key is a value independent of the plain text. That means it is not dependent on this file. It can be any independent value or set of values. The algorithm will produce a different output depending on the specified key. The exact substitution and the transformation performed by the algorithm will depend on this key. So when you use an encryption algorithm and use a secret key on a plain text, you get a transformed transmitted cipher text. It is actually a scrambled message produced as output. It depends on the plain text and the secret key. For a given message, two different keys will produce two different cipher text. The cipher text is an apparently random stream of data and its stands is unintelligible. That means if you are able to read the plain text, you use an encryption algorithm and encryption key to transform this readable text to an unreadable text called the cipher text. The final component deals with the description of the encrypted message. This is essentially the same algorithm, encryption algorithm used in the previous step. However, it runs in the reverse direction. It takes the cipher text and the secret key and produces the original plain text, which is represented here. So if we represent it mathematically, we have an encryption key, we have a message known as plain text, and we use an algorithm called encryption algorithm, and we have a transmitted message. So we have a transmitted cipher text represented as Y. We present that it is a combination of an algorithm E performed on some key and an input value X. Similarly, if you decrypt the message, you get the exact input that was sent by a sender, and you can use it, you can find out by applying a decryption algorithm using the same key but the encrypted message. In symmetric cipher model, there are two requirements for secure use of conventional algorithm. The number one is strong encryption algorithm, and the number two is the strong or secure transfer of security key. To illustrate the first concept, at minimum we would like the algorithm to be such that an opponent who knows the algorithm and has access to the one or more the cipher text would be unable to decipher the cipher text or figure out the key. That means your attacker should not be able to read the message or find out the key that was used to encrypt the message. Secondly, if someone can discover the key and knows the algorithm, all communication using this key is readable. So therefore, a sender and receiver must have obtained the copies of secret key in a secure fashion so that no one should be able to get that key, and the sender and the receiver must ensure that they keep the key secure. Additionally, it is very impractical to decrypt a message on the basis of ciphertext plus the knowledge of encryption decryption algorithm. That means you cannot actually decrypt the message until you have the information about the secret key. This feature of symmetric encryption is make it feasible, and it is therefore widespreadly used. With the use of symmetric encryption, the principal security problem is maintaining the secrecy of the public or the private key. So again, let's have a closer look at the most essential elements of a symmetric encryption scheme. A source produces a message in the plain text, already referred as X. The message X can be a sequence of letters. They can be represented by alphabets known as set of M. Traditionally, if you consider the English language, there are only 26 capital letters. However, nowadays you can use the binary alphabets that contains only two letters such as 0 and 1. For an encryption key of the form K already represented is derived from a key source. So if you derive the key from a key source, it is your responsibility to transfer this key to a destination in a safe and a secure manner. So there are both possibilities. That means you can generate the key at the source and transfer it to the destination, or you can use a third party that actually generates the key and shares the key between the sender and the receiver. So the responsibility of transmission is uh, dependent on the third party. So as we discussed earlier, the encryption, yeah, or encrypted message consists of an encryption algorithm, and it uses key and original message. Similarly, the decryption consists of uh, sorry, the decryption consists of a decryption algorithm and a message Y that was already decrypted or ciphered and using the key K. Now the point of attack is here during the secure transmission, and as you must be familiar with the term, cryptanalysis is an attacker who is observing a message on a channel. The cryptanalyst observe the message Y. That means it is an encrypted message, and he cannot observe the original message X, and he cannot observe the value of key. However, the goal of attacker is to obtain either the message or the key, or both of the key and the message, to actually find out the actual information. So as we have already discussed that encryption and decryption algorithms are most probably public. Therefore, our cryptanalyst knows the encryption algorithm and the decryption algorithm. However, he does not know about the original message and the key. So if the goal of the cryptanalyst is to find out the information in the X, that means he only wants to get the information about the current message. Alternatively, if the goal of the cryptanalyst is to get the key, that means he wants to get the current information and any further information that will be carried from the source to the destination. So similarly, for both techniques, he can apply some methods to extract the information similar to current message known as X bar, or he can use different exploits to find out the key known as K bar. So he can actually use a variety of keys and variety of message to actually find out the exact message from the ciphered text. That leads to the definition of cryptographic systems. Cryptographic systems are characterized along three independent dimensions. The first dimension deals with the type of operations used for and transforming plain text to ciphertext. So this can be done using the two techniques, substitution and transposition. All encryption algorithms are used based on these two principles, in which the first principle deals with the substitution, which each of the elements of the plain text are mapped to another element. For example, you can replace each alphabet with another alphabet. This will be known as substitution. That means you will substitute the information with another information so that the original information is scrambled and it is not understandable by the attacker. However, transposition deals with the elements in which plain text are rearranged. That means you do not replace it with some another values. You actually shuffle the values in the same text and rearrange that plain text into another form that will be called ciphertext. The fundamental requirement is that no information is lost in both cases, and all the operations should be reversible so that the decryption algorithm uses the reverse mechanism employed by the the transposition or substitution to get the original message. The next dimension of cryptographic system is the number of keys used. So if both sender and receiver use the same key, known as single key, secret key, then the system is referred as symmetric, single key, secret key, or conventional encryption. So on the other hand, if the sender and the receiver use the different key, the system is referred as asymmetric system, and it can use the two key or a public key encryption. The third dimension of the system defines that the way in which the plain text is processed. It can be processed in two ways, such as block cipher and stream of the cipher. A block cipher processes the input as a one block of elements at a time, producing the output block for each input block. However, in the stream cipher, the input elements are continuously producing the output one element at a time as it goes along. Apart from the cryptographic systems, the other part of the cryptographic symmetric model is cryptanalysis and brute force attacks. Typically, the objective of attacking an encryption system is to recover either the key or the plain text in rather than simply using just the plain text of the ciphertext. Therefore, two general approaches to attacking a conventional encryption schemes are cryptanalysis and brute force attack. So, a cryptanalysis attack relies on the nature of the algorithm plus the knowledge of general characteristics of the plain text. That means attacker knows the actual working of algorithm and he predicts some of the plain text, that what kind of information it is being transferred, and with that some kind of help or prediction he can actually try to reach the actual information. Cryptanalysis attacks exploit the characteristics of the algorithm to attempt to deduce a specific plaintext or deduce the key being used. That means it is more about experiment and detection of the information from the known information. On the other hand, brute force attack usually does not deal with the prediction or guessing. It In brute force attack, the attacker tries every possible key on a piece of ciphertext until an intelligible translation into a plain text is obtained. On average, half of the possible keys must be tried to achieve the success. So this is the general observation that in most of the brute force attacks, half of the total keys. For example, if our system like previous had the 26 keys, on average 13 keys are tried to actually extract the information. Conclusively, if either of these attacks succeed in deducing the key, the effect is quite catastrophic. If the attacker is able to find out the key, then the current communication and all further communications are at stake, and the future messages will be compromised without the knowledge of the designer. This table summarizes the various types of cryptanalytic attacks based on the amount of information known to cryptanalysts. So these lists the type of attacks, and these are the information known to cryptanalysts. The most difficult problem is presented in when all that is available is the ciphertext only. That means if no other information is available to the cryptanalyst, it is very difficult to initiate an attack or extract the information. In some cases, not even the encryption algorithm is known, but in general we can assume that the opponent does not know the algorithm used for encryption. So one possible attack under these circumstances is the brute force approach, as we have discussed earlier. It tries all possible keys. If the key space is very large, that means if you are using a huge key base, this is the brute force attack is very impractical. Therefore, the opponent must rely on analysis of ciphertext itself, generally applying various tests to it. So the first text type of attack is presented here is ciphertext only attack, and it is very easy to defend against because the opponent has the least amount of information to work. For example, the opponent only knows the encryption algorithm and the secret message. It does not have any further information. So this is a very weak kind of attack, and it actually there are many low chances. They have very low chances to compromise the information in such kind of attack. For example, this can be a file that is encoded in the PostScript format, and it begins with some pattern, or there can be some standardized header or banner, or with electronic fund transfer and so on. So if this information is not available to the cipher cryptanalysis, there will be very less chance to decode such information. Another kind of attack is known as non-plain text. That means the user or the cryptanalyst has the encryption algorithm, the ciphertext, and the one or more plain text pairs formed with the correct secret key. That means he has some information, as discussed in the previous text, that was not available in this case. He has some information available in this case. So with this knowledge, the analyst may be able to deduce the key on the basis of the way in which the known plaintext is transformed. Another kind of attack is chosen plaintext. Again, the cryptanalyst has the encryption algorithm, the ciphertext, and it also has the plaintext message chosen by himself, together with its corresponding ciphertext generated with the secret key. That means he has some understanding of the message, that what kind of message it will be, and he has some information about that message. This will be quite easy to actually decode the information. For example, if an entire accounting file is being transmitted, the opponent may know that placement of certain keywords in the whole header and of the file. Another example is the source code of a program developed by corporation X might include the copyright statement in the some standardized position. So with this information, they can also extract the information from the later part of the file. Similarly, there is another kind of attack known as chosen ciphertext, which is very much similar to the chosen text. So in both kind of attacks, if the analyst is able to choose the message to encrypt, the analyst may deliberately pick patterns that can be expected to reveal the structure of the key. For example, any ciphertext chosen here by cryptanalysis can help him to find out some useful information that can be embedded with other information already present in the ciphertext to actually decode the message. These are not very much commonly used type of attacks. However, this can happen if your cryptanalysts have the better understanding of your security system. Only the weak algorithms will fail to withstand such kind of attacks. If your algorithm is have some quality, you will your data should be able to withhold this kind of attacks. However, our desired uh, algorithm should be able to target this kind of attacks, such that they should be able to defend against the known plain text and the chosen plain text from the attacker. So in this technique or encryption scheme security, two definitions are worthy to consider or worthy to understand. The number one is unconditional security and computational security. Unconditional security means no matter how much the time an opponent has, it is impossible for him to decrypt the ciphertext simply because the required information is not there. This means if the ciphertext generated by scheme does not contain enough information to determine the actual plaintext, no matter how much ciphertext is available. Similarly, the next definition states that, which means the computationally secure security mechanism. This deals with it states that the cost of breaking a cipher exceeds the value of encrypted information. That means if you employ some encryption algorithm, there should be enough computational power required to decrypt the message, and the value of such computation must exceed the value of information. The time required to break the cipher exceeds the useful lifetime of the information. This is very uh, actually good point for the designer of the system. So if you transfer the information and you use an encryption algorithm that is computationally secure, and you transfer the message for with such information that is only relevant for small amount of time, and if the attacker is able to find out the information after some time, it will not be very useful to the attacker. So a brute force attack involves trying every possible key until an intelligible translation of the cipher text is converted into a plain text. So it is already estimated that on average half of the possible keys must be tried to achieve success. For example, if there are x different keys, we must try x by 2 keys to actually decode the message. So it is also important to note here that there is more to a brute force attack than simply running through all possible keys. That means the brute force attack can be integrated with another kind of attack to achieve more success. So unless known plain text is provided, the analyst must be able to recognize plain text as plain text. If the message is just a plain text in English, then the result is very easily acquired. Although the task of recognizing English would have to be automated. So if the text message has to be compressed before the encryption, the recognition is more difficult. And if the message is some more general type of data such as a numerical file which has been compressed, the problem becomes even more difficult to automate. So the complexity of information actually increase the safety of your information or security of your information. Another possibility is for cryptanalysis to support the brute force attack. Some degree of knowledge about the expected plain text is needed, and some means that automatically distinguishing plain text from the garble is also needed. For example, if you appoint a brute force attack on a system for logging into a user account, you if you try all possible combination in the world, you will not be able to succeed. However, if you know the name of the user, you can guess the username by using some of his initials or first name or last name, and with some phone numbers or part of his or her phone number. So this leads us to our second topic, the substitution techniques. In this section, we are going to examine a sampling of what might call the classical encryption techniques. These techniques enable us to illustrate the basic approaches to symmetric encryption used today and the types of cryptanalytic attacks that must be anticipated. So two basic building blocks of encryption techniques are already discussed. Number one was named as substitution and the other one was named as transposition. So we are going to discuss the substitution techniques here. The substitution technique is one which the letters of plain text are replaced with other letters or by numbers or by symbols. So it actually substitutes the information with some other information. So if the plain text is viewed as a sequence of bits, then the substitution involves replacing plain text bit pattern with the ciphertext bit pattern. The simplest and the earliest known use of substitution cipher is called Caesar cipher. It was named after Julius Caesar, a famous Roman emperor and a general, and it involves replacing each letter of alphabet with the letter standing three places further down the alphabet. So alphabet is wrapped around the letter following Z is A. So if we consider the plain text, we use a text meet me after the Tuga party. So if we use this Caesar cipher that states that we use the substitution of three places further down the alphabet. That means if we are using an alphabet A, we replace it or substitute it with the three letters down to it, D. So that means A will be replaced by D, B will be replaced by E, so on, and Z will be replaced by, sorry, uh, X will be replaced by A, Y will be replaced by B, and Z will be replaced by C, and the similar pattern will go here. So if we look at the example here, meet me after the 2 class. So M is our first character. So if we shift three characters, M to 1N, to O, 3P. Similarly, E is shifted as F, G, H. So meet becomes PHHW, me becomes PH, and so on. The similar pattern is repeated till the end. So if you apply this cipher and you transmit your message, no one will be able to understand this message unless they have the Caesar cipher key, and the key we used here is the 3-step down. So it can also be transformed as letters. With the letters, as we have already discussed, we shifted the shift three alphabet shift algorithm, and we replaced A with the D, and we replaced X with the A, and so on, Z with the C. So we can use such technique to encrypt our algorithm. Similarly, you can also use the mathematical substitution. For example, you can use the numbers for each letter. If you start from A and you index it at 0, you will get the index 25 at the last. So our encryption algorithm, or we say our definition for ciphertext, was using an encryption algorithm, using the key, and using the X. So it states that we have the key of 3 here, and the message was some kind of paragraph, and we apply the encryption algorithm. So in this case, we get paragraph, that means letter of uh, each word in the paragraph, and we add plus 3, that means we add in 3 alphabets down to that alphabet, and we take the modulus of 26 to actually get the encryption algorithm. So a key can be any value. For example, we use the key 3 here, but this is not the fixed term. A shift may be any amount, so the general Caesar algorithm is C of ek comma p. That means you can use any paragraph or word with k. K can be anything from 1 to 0 to 25 if you are dealing with the English letter. So where k takes on a value of range from 1 to 25, the decryption algorithm is simply opposite of encryption algorithm. So we used, for example, we used added the 3 or k keys into the paragraph. We can minus the k keys from the cipher text. That means if we present the algorithm in the same manner, we represented y as the secret message. If we want to decrypt the same message that was represented by X, we use the D decryption algorithm, key, and Y encrypted algorithm. Similarly, here key is represented by K, and a message ciphertext is represented by C, which was represented by Y in the initial uh, slide. Similarly, uh, when you added the keys, you encrypted the message. Now you have to subtract the keys to decrypt the message. So here are possible combinations for each of the key to decrypt the message we used to encrypt the in the previous slide. So if we apply all the random key using the brute force attack, we may be able to extract the information. For example, if we apply the one shift key, we get this value, and if we apply the 2 shift key, we get this value, and if we get the 3 shift key, we get the actual value meet me after the Tuga party. So none of the other message is actually quite readable. So attacker may apply the brute force attack to actually extract the information. However, this is a very simple kind of algorithm, and the characteristics presented in the previous slide of this problem enabled us to use a brute force attacks because it was very simple algorithm. We have the algorithm to encrypt only by addition and subtraction of the keys, and there were only limited keys. For example, we have only 25 keys in total because we could not use the zero shift that will be in the original message. And the third thing was the language of the plain text is also very easily recognizable. That means the simple text is very easily recognizable. So this was very easy to actually decode the information. So as we discussed, in most situation, we can assume that the algorithm is being used is almost known to all the parties. So how can we mitigate the brute force attacks? Practically, it is very difficult to mitigate the brute force attacks. However, if you use a large number of keys, for example, if in the above text, if you have used 50 keys, there are more chances that your brute force attack will be very more difficult than this one. And if you triple the keys, or if you use the 1,000 keys, you will increase the chances of your algorithm to perform better. For example, if you use the triple data encryption algorithm, such as for this case, it uses a 168-bit key, and it takes about 2 raised to power 168 keys, that is equal to 3.7 cross 10 raised to power 50 possible keys. So the increase of the keys is very if we increase the number of keys, it is very easy to mitigate the number of attacks. However, if we increase, or if we use the language of plain text, for example, in the previous example, language was very easy to recognize. So this is very a significant property. So if the language of plain text is unknown, the plain text output may not be recognizable. For example, furthermore, if the input may be abbreviated or compressed in some fashion, that means if you change the input before providing it to encryption algorithm, this will be very difficult to recognize the information. For example, this slide shows a portion of a text file compressed using an algorithm called zip algorithm. If the file if this file is encrypted with a simple substitution cipher using the previous one, it will be very easy to encrypt the plain text. However, if it is used with a higher number of keys, the plain text may not be recognized when it is uncovered with the brute force cryptanalysis. So as we have discussed that with only 25 possible keys, the Caesar cipher is not very secure. A dramatic increase in the key space can be achieved by allowing substitution. Before proceeding, we define another algorithm called monoalphabetic cipher, which actually works with the use of permutation. So you must be very familiar with the term permutation. Permutation is of a finite set of element S is an ordered sequence of elements of S, with each element appearing exactly once. So for example, if you have a set S and you have the inputs A, B, C, you can apply the permutation and you get the 6 values that will be ABC, ACB, A, BAC, BCA, and it can be CAB and CBA. So in general, there are n factorial permutations of a set of n elements. So you are very familiar with the concept of permutation. If we have 5 values in our set, we will get the permutation is equal to 5 factorial. And the first element can be chosen because any of element can be chosen in n ways, and the number of elements next to that can be chosen in n minus 1 ways. So if the cipher line can be any permutation of 26 alphabets characters, then there are 26 factorial or greater than 4 raised to power 10 raised to power 26, 4 cross 10 raised to power 26 possible keys. So this is 10 orders of magnitude greater than the space for data encryption standard. So this approach is referred as monoalphabetic substitution cipher because a single cipher alphabet is used per message. However, this is another line of attack. If the cryptanalysis knows the nature of plain text, for example, it can know the text contains the English letters. The analyst can exploit the regularities of the language. So, for example, if an attacker actually gets hold to a cipher text that is unreadable, for example, you can use the previous text in the example. So, at the first step, the attacker will try to identify the relative frequency of the letters that can be determined and compared to a standard frequency of distribution. So this is the relative frequency of distribution. That means in all the text overall in the language and textbooks, the number of alphabets covered in this proportions. Therefore, uh, if the message were long enough, this technique alone might be sufficient. For example, if you have a large file, you can use these techniques to actually get the pattern of the text. So you can identify that which pattern it goes with the with the number of which number of letters come together in the English text, so you can actually guess the some part of the message, and using that some part you can guess the further information from the message. So if the message is long enough, you can also decrypt the information. However, if the message is short, it is very difficult to get the information using this technique. So if you or any attacker is able to get the pattern of the message, that means if an cryptanalyst is able to find out the pair of the words or the combination of the word, they can get a reasonable skeleton of the message. The more systematic approach will look for other regularities such as other patterns. For example, certain words may be or may be known to text. For example, you can look for the diagrams that are two letter combinations, or you can look at the diagrams trigrams that are three letter combination. So monoalphabetic ciphers are tend to easy to break because they reflect the frequency of original data set or alphabet. Countermeasures is to provide multiple substitutes for a single letter. However, this technique can also be compromised using the homophones. We will discuss the homophones in some later examples. So, the diagram is a powerful tool to look at the frequency of two letter combinations. Most common diagram is the T letter TH, that is very much that has a high frequency to occur in any text. Similarly, in the trigram, three-letter combinations are observed, and most commonly three-letter words are used in English is THE, the word the. So if you are able to know such patterns, you can identify the many letters or the combination of letter, and you can get the quite a bit of information from the message. And this analysis of frequency plus trial and error should easily yield a solution from the input. So monoalphabetic ciphers are very easy to break. So this leads to the conclusion of or summary of this lecture. In this lecture, we discussed some fundamental terms, and then we discussed a symmetric cipher model in which a symmetric encryption key or a secret key is used. We defined the term cryptography and how it can be used to actually secure or transfer the information from one form to another. So there were two common techniques of cryptography known as substitution and transposition techniques. We also discuss some concepts of cryptanalysis and brute force attacks. A brute force attack is done by using any combination of input or a secret key, and cryptanalysis is a technique to actually find out the information to deface the actual performance of your encryption algorithm. The algorithm can be strengthened by applying a number of substitution techniques. We discussed two fundamental techniques that were used in from quite a long time. The first one was cipher Caesar cipher, which was named after the Julius Caesar, and it used the combination of transfer from one word to one letter to another. And then we used the monoalphabetic cipher, which was very much related to uh, Caesar cipher, but it used more keys than the Caesar cipher. If you want to study more, you can read the chapter 3 of the recommended book. And if you have any question, you can ask me through any channel, or you can conduct a question and answer session. Thank you very much.